Okay, so I want to talk about your big three: our sun, our moon, and our rising. Because if you ever been on Instagram or whatever, maybe someone being very a little bit overgeneralized, like I'm such a Leo. And maybe you're wondering, what does that even actually mean? Like beyond the memes, beyond the Leo the dramatic or Virgo the perfection type of stuff. Or maybe you discovered you have a moon sign and a rising sign. And now you're standing there with three different zodiac signs attached to your identity. And maybe you're wondering, which one is the real me? Am I lying about two of them? Is this a scam? It's not. But I've been there. And honestly, I honestly do feel like a lot of astrology content kind of makes this more confusing, not less. Because, they'll kind of hit you with your sun is your ego, your moon's your emotion, your rising is your mask. And technically, that is kind of accurate, but it doesn't actually help you understand what any of that means in real life. It doesn't tell you why you have three different signs operating simultaneously. Actually, you have more. It doesn't tell you how to actually use this information when you're trying to figure out why you may do the contradictory things you do. So I want to try to explain this a little differently, the way I wish someone had explained to me when I was first trying to make sense of my chart. So we're going to break down sun, moon, and rising using the actual seasonal methodology. We're going to use concrete examples with the signs that I kind of want to talk about. And I kind of want to make this feel less like a textbook and I don't know, more of like maybe you and I are sitting somewhere trying to figure this out together over some coffee or something. I don't know. Here's what I've learned: sun, moon, and rising aren't three random personality tests you got assigned at birth. There are three different questions your chart is answering about how you navigate being alive. And I think that once you understand what those questions actually are, once you stop trying to pick which sign is the real you and start seeing how they all work together, all three of them, that everything may start to make a lot more sense. But why do you even have three signs? And I think that question is very easy. Like, why can't we just have one sign and call it a day? Because you're literally not one thing. And I don't mean it in like that you're special and complex motivational poster type of way. I mean it literally. You're not operating from a single mode all the time. Like, think about it. You show up differently at a job interview than you do with your best friend at 2 a.m., right? Because you process stress differently. Then you pursue long-term goals. You have different versions of yourself that activates in different contexts, and all of them are real. And that's not being fake or inconsistent. That's just being a human with a nervous system that adapts to different situations. And your chart is what ends up reflecting that. So we're going to kind of talk about your big three and what each sign is tracking. So for your sun is where you're going, your direction over time, what you're becoming, the long game. Your moon is how you regulate your emotional survival system, what you need when everything feels like it's just too much. And your rising, it speaks to how you enter, your instinctive first response, your interface with the world before you even think about it. See, these aren't in conflict. They're operating at different speeds and layers, and they're all shaped by something real. The season you were born into, the actual climate, the survival strategies that made sense at that specific time of year. This is going to make more sense in a second. I promise. Before we go any deeper, I want to be on the same page about what the zodiac actually is. Because if you're thinking about it like personality categories or vibes or whatever, this is going to sound weird. But if you understand the zodiac as a map of seasonal survival strategies, as a way of tracking how different times of year requires different approaches to staying alive, then everything am going to say is going to click, I think. Because the zodiac follows the sun's movement throughout the year. Each sign corresponds to a specific climate. Aries is our late March, early April. This is time of the first thaw, when spring starts to break through. Cancer is late June, early July. This is our peak summer. This is maximum heat and light. And Libra is late September, early October. This is our autumn equinox, our balance point. And Pisces is late February, early March, end of winter, waiting for the thaw. You see, each season has its own survival strategies, and the rest of the signs fill in between those anchor points. And each season's survival strategy has its own logic, and it has its own answer to the question of, what do I need to do right now to make it through? If you're early spring, you need to move fast for the window close. If you're deep winter, you need to conserve and wait. If you're late summer, you need to harvest while you can. And that's not metaphor, that's ecology. That's how organisms survive in changing conditions. When you're born, you're entering the world through one of these seasonal strategies. Your nervous system is forming in those conditions, and your body is learning, "Oh, this is what survival looks like. This is the rhythm that makes sense." And that imprint, it stays with you. Even if you've never actually lived through an actual winter, never seen the snow, even if you never think about seasons consciously, it's in your system. And that is what your natal chart is mapping. Sometimes I like to call your birth chart like your fingerprint of the sky and the placement where everything was when you were born, like a snapshot. A fingerprint, all of our fingerprints are unique. And so that's why it just kind of reminds me of a fingerprint. Let's get into it. Let's talk about our sun, the direction you're walking, and what your sun actually means. So, your sun sign is the zodiac sign that the sun was moving on the day you were born. It's the easiest one for us to tell because it takes about 28 something days change. And so we're able to figure out people's sun signs a lot easier with just knowing the month and the day you were born. Don't even need the year. 1 second. Mhm. But your sun sign is your orientation point. It's your long-term direction. It's not who you are right this second, but it's actually more so of what you're becoming over time. So if you kind of think of it like you're on a road trip and you're moving through life, through time, through experience, and your sun is that direction that you're driving in. It's what you're moving toward. It's a thing that will feel like for you, like, yeah, this is right when you look back on your life later on. So, for example, I'm a Pisces, and saying I'm a Pisces, that actually doesn't mean that I am currently exhibiting all Pisces traits at all time. When I say I'm a Pisces sun, I'm actually saying that I'm moving through life as in a Pisces direction, and I'm orienting myself towards Pisces themes, and I'm becoming more Pisces as I go. And that direction is seasonal. It's based on the climate you were born into. So like I said, we'll start Pisces as an example. Let's talk about the Pisces sun. Like say you were born as a Pisces sun. That means that the sun was in Pisces when you were born, which means you were born in late February or early March, the end of winter. And at the end of winter, everything is dissolving. The freeze is starting to break, ice is melting into water, boundaries are getting softer. What was solid is becoming fluid, and the whole landscape is transitioning between states. This is the liminal time, the in between. Quite winter anymore, but it's not quite spring yet. So, the survival strategy for a Pisces sun is to let go. Don't hold form too tightly, to stay fluid and to trust this transition. So if you're a Pisces sun, that's your orientation. That's what your system is moving toward over time. You're learning to not need everything to be so solid and defined and fixed, right? You're learning to trust those in between spaces, and that learning that sometimes the best thing you can do is dissolve the boundaries and to see what emerges. And as you age, you become more comfortable with this, more able to navigate ambiguity, more willing to let things be undefined and shapeless, and more trusting of the process of transformation. That's not about being dreamy or escapist, though, yeah, Pisces can do that too. It's more so about being oriented toward fluidity as a survival strategy, toward the wisdom of not grasping too hard, towards the understanding that sometimes falling apart is how you prepare for what's next. Or, next example, let's look at the Aries sun. Late March, early April, first real thaw of spring. And the survival strategy here is to move now and not wait for perfect conditions because you got to break through before the window closes. Because right now, the ground is basically soft for like, what, 2 seconds? If you are a seed or an animal coming out of hibernation, if you're trying to claim territory, you got to go now, right now, while the opportunity is here. And so there's no time to overthink or to like make perfect preparations. You just have to act. So if you're an Aries sun, that's your direction. You're moving through life inquiring what needs to happen now. What do I need to initiate? What window am I about to miss if I don't move? And as you get older, you get more comfortable with that, more trusting of your instinct to start before you're ready, more confident in your ability to just figure it out as you go. You're becoming someone who knows how to break new ground. So, what the sun is not, and kind of why this matters, because here's what I think trips people up. Your sun is not who you are right now, especially if you're young, especially if you're still figuring yourself out. If you're 23 and you got a Virgo sun, you probably don't feel Virgo yet. You probably feel messy, or you might feel like you're still learning how to refine anything. This doesn't mean that your chart is wrong. It means that you're still walking towards Virgo. You're still becoming it because your sun is your long game. It's that thing that makes more sense as you get older. And honestly, I kind of think that's like pretty beautiful because your sun tells you Here's where you're headed. Here's what's going to feel like home eventually. And here's what you're building toward, even if you can't see it yet. It gives you permission to not have it all figured out right now. See, your sun tells you what you're optimizing for over time. It tells you what will feel meaningful to you as you age, what will feel like growth, what will feel like you're on the right path. If you're a Libra sun and you build a life where there's no harmony, balance, consideration of other perspectives, you're going to feel off. Not because balance is objectively the best way to live, but because your system is oriented towards balance as a long-term direction, and that's your compass. If you are a Gemini sun and you build a life where you never get to learn anything new, where information just never circulates and where everything stays the same, you're going to end up feeling stuck because your system is oriented towards movement and having mental stimulation. Because your sun tells you what will feel right in the long run, not what's comfortable tomorrow, not what's easy right now, but what will feel true when you look back and you inquire, did I move in a direction that actually fit me? Now, let's talk about our moon. Because if your sun is where you're going, what's the moon? Well, the moon is how you regulate. It is your nervous system survival strategy when things get overwhelming. It is how you process stress and self soothe and what you need to feel safe when everything's falling apart. Because here's the thing about the moon, it operates unconsciously. You don't choose it or think about it when you're dysregulated, right? When you're upset, triggered, or overwhelmed, your moon is the thing that just kicks in automatically. You know how everyone has that thing they need to do when they're stressed? Some people need to talk it out immediately, or be completely alone, or clean, or watch TV for 6 hours, or go on a drive, or need physical touch, or some people just need everyone to go away. That's the moon. That's your regulation system doing what it knows how to do based on the season it learned in, it growed in, it lives in. Moon. If you have a Cancer moon, that means the moon was basically in Cancer when you were born. Cancer is early summer, late June, early July, which is peak vulnerability time. Everything that broke through in spring is now fully exposed, right? Young growth, new plants, everything's visible, everything's delicate. We're in that peak heat, this peak need for water and protection. So, the survival strategy is to create containers, protect what's vulnerable, maintain safe conditions, because you can't just leave new growth out in the elements and hope for the best, right? You have to create shelter. You have to monitor constantly. You have to nurture when needs nurturing. And if you have a Cancer moon, that's your emotional regulation system. When you're stressed, your nervous system, it goes to this place where it's like, I need to know things are safe. I need to protect what's vulnerable. I need emotional warmth and containment. And if you're overwhelmed, you probably retreat and create boundaries and check on those people you do care about. And you need to confirm that everyone's okay before you yourself can calm down. And this is not because you're codependent or too emotional, but because your nervous system literally won't settle until it knows that the vulnerable things are protected, that the container is intact, that everyone's safe. That's the moon doing your job, doing its job. And you can't override that. You can't just decide, I'm not going to care if people are okay, because your system doesn't work like that. Now let's take a look at the Gemini moon. Late May, early June, late spring. And in late spring, everything is growing and moving. Information is circulating. Pollinators are active. Seeds are spreading. The whole ecosystem is in motion. And the survival strategy excuse me, becomes to circulate and keep moving, to not get stuck into process through connection. So if you have a Gemini moon, that's how you regulate stress. When something's overwhelming, your nervous system, it wants to move and talk and process out loud and circulate the information and make connections. You might call you up 3 different friends, type out a long text and then delete it. You might talk to yourself while you're driving. You might need to explain what happened, even if the person you're talking to doesn't fully get it. Because your nervous system, it doesn't calm down through stillness, it calms down through circulation. And sometimes that's frustrating, right? Especially if you have a sun sign that wants something different. Maybe you're a Virgo sun trying to be organized and methodical. But your Gemini moon may feel like, oh, I need to talk about this 17 different ways before I can even settle. But that's real. That's how you actually work. And fighting it will just keep you dysregulated longer. So let's talk about what your moon is not. Your moon is not your full emotional range. Because see, having like the Pisces moon, for example, doesn't mean you're emotional all the time, even though I can be emotional all the time as Pisces moon. But having a Virgo moon doesn't mean you're always cold or analytical as a baseline either. Your moon is specifically about regulation under stress. It is what happens when things go sideways, when you're triggered, when your system is overwhelmed. The rest of the time, you might be fine and funny and social and like whatever else. But your moon is your stress response. It's not your entire personality. And here's the other thing. You don't get to choose it. Sometimes your moon is freaking inconvenient. Sometimes it doesn't match what you want to be doing. Sometimes it conflicts with your sun. Like maybe you're an Aries sun trying to move fast and break through barriers, but you have a Cancer moon. So when things get hard, you don't want to push through, you want to retreat. You want to check in with someone else. You want emotional reassurance before you can keep going. And that's frustrating. But it's also just how you were wired. Your job isn't to override it. Your job is to learn how to work with it. Because you can't willpower your way out of your nervous system. If you have a Cancer moon and you're stressed, you need emotional connection to calm down. You can try to tough it out alone or not be so sensitive, but your system is not going to cooperate. You'll just stay activated. Your moon tells you what you actually need, not what you think you should need. And once you stop fighting it, once you give yourself what your moon is inquiring for, everything just gets easier. I have a Pisces moon, so when I'm overwhelmed, I kind of like need to dissolve the problem somehow. I need to step back from the literal facts and kind of try to find the bigger meaning and not hold everything so tightly. And for a long time, I thought that it was just kind of me being avoidant, even though sometimes it kind of is. But I've also kind of felt like maybe I should deal with my feelings more directly. But now I know that this is how I deal with my feelings. My system processes through softening the boundaries, through finding the spiritual or creative or imaginative angle, through letting things be like undefined for a while. And when I do that, I actually calm down and then I can function again. Because that's what your moon gives you. It tells you how to take care of yourself in a way that actually works for your system, not for someone else's. So now let's talk about the rising and what it actually means. So if your sun is where you're going and your moon is how you regulate, your rising is how you enter. It is your first instinctive response to new situations, how you show up before you've had time to think about it, how you meet the world. So what makes rising different from the sun and moon is that rising is immediate. It's not long term like the sun. It's not hidden like the moon. It's the first thing people encounter when they meet you. It's the first thing you do when you walk into the room. It's your interface, your front door, your default presentation, and it's shaped by the climate that was literally rising on the horizon at the moment you were born. So that's how the rising sign works. It's also called the ascendant. It is a zodiac sign that was on the basically like on the threshold between night and day, the entry point. So your rising is literally the seasonal energy that was entering as you entered the world. It's the first survival strategy your body registered. The first question the environment inquired from you of how are you going to handle this? And that becomes your instinctive first move for the rest of your life. So let's take Libra rising, for example. Okay. So say you have Libra rising. What that technically means is that was on the eastern horizon when you were born. Libra is late September, early October, autumn equinox. And at this time, this perfect balance. The day and night are exactly equal. Everything is in equilibrium, but it's a temporary equilibrium because the balance is about to tip towards the darkness and the cold. So the survival strategy is to assess and to find the balance point to read the room and to adapt to maintain harmony. Because see, at the equinox, you can't just charge forward. You can't ignore the environmental conditions. You have to be aware of the balance, adjust accordingly, and make sure you're not tipping things in a dangerous direction. So if you have a Libra rising, that's how you enter situations. When you walk into a room, you don't just barrel in, you assess, read the vibe, figure out where you fit in. Probably smile, make some eye contact, and position yourself to be included without forcing it. Not because you're fake, not because you're people pleasing, but because your system learned that survival means reading the balance. Survival means adapting to the environment. Survival means not disrupting the equilibrium until you know what you're working with. And that's kind of your rising doing this job. Now let's take Aries, for example. Aries is late March, early April, first thaw. And their survival strategy is to move first, break through, and don't wait. So if you have an Aries rising, you enter situations differently than Libra rising. You probably walk into the same room and you just go. Introduce yourself to the first person you see, start a conversation, take up space. Not because you're arrogant, not because you're inconsiderate, but because your system learned that if I wait, if I miss my window, if I hang back, someone else gets there first. Your rising is doing what it was built to do. So let's talk about what rising is not. Sometimes I think people like will say like your rising is your mask, your rising is fake, your rising is how you pretend to be. And I think that's wrong. Your rising is real. It's not a performance or something you put on. It's your actual instinctive response. I have Virgo rising, and I instinctively assess for what needs to be fixed or refined whenever I enter a situation. And I don't think that's fake of me or a mask, but that's genuinely how my nervous system processes new environments. And so the reason people think it's a mask is because your rising is what shows up first. So people will assume it's not the real you, but it is real. It's just the entry point version of you. When you meet someone new, you don't immediately show them your moon. You don't start by sharing your deepest regulation patterns. That comes later. That comes when you feel safe. But your rising is there from second one. It is how you shake someone's hand, how you make eye contact, how you navigate the first 5 minutes. It's real. It's just first. And here's where things get kind of interesting, I think, like in a very 2026 way. So your rising tells you how you're being perceived in digital spaces too. Like think about your Instagram feed, dating profile, how you show up in the first few messages with someone new, your LinkedIn, maybe your first impression in a Zoom call. That's rising territory. If you have Gemini rising, your digital presence, it probably feels light, curious, adaptable. You might have a lot of different like stuff in your content. You might ask a lot of questions. You might seem approachable and easy to talk to. If you're Pisces rising, your digital presence might feel more dreamy, artistic, undefined. You might not have a super clear like brand. You might seem a little mysterious or hard to pin down. Neither is better or is wrong. It's just what your system does instinctively at the interface. Once you know that, you can intentionally work with it. So, like maybe you're Virgo rising and you keep getting feedback that you seem too detail oriented or too critical in work meetings. That's not mean or wrong. That's just what Virgo rising does. It enters by assessing and refining. So now you have the choice to like make a decision. Do I want to soften that entry point? Do I want to warm up my initial presentation? Or do I actually like that my rising creates clear boundaries and high standards right from the get go? Either way, you have information about your interface and you know what signal you're sending before you even said a word. And that's how you can work with it intentionally. Now let's talk about how the sun, moon, and rising all work together. So we have three pieces we've talked about, and I want to talk about how they actually interact in your real life. So here's kind of the framework. Rising how you enter, your moon is how you regulate, your sun is where you're going. I kind of want to think about like a sequence. You walk into a situation, your rising kicks in. That's your instinctive response. Then something happens that triggers stress or emotion, so your moon kicks in. That's your regulating system. Over time, you orient to yourself and you remember your direction, remember who you are. Your sun kicks in. That's what you're building towards. All three are happening, right? But just at these very different speeds and very different layers. So I have this whole party example that we're gonna kind of go through. Okay. So imagine you walk into a party where you don't know anybody. Because this is like my easiest way to explain it. And I think I've kind of like gotten it like 'cause this is the example I use for my people, my real life when I try to talk about this. But so your rising is how you enter, right? So for our Gemini rising, you're going to most likely walk in, scan for someone interesting to talk to, make a joke with the person next to you in the kitchen, bounce between a few conversations. If you're Cancer rising, you're probably going to scan the room first, look for someone who feels safe and warm, maybe hang near the snacks until someone initiates with you and starts to talk with you. If you're an Aries rising, you're probably going to walk in confidently, introduce yourself to the first person you see, and inquire if they know anyone else here and start building your network immediately. Now let's look at the moon, how you regulate stress. Now let's say someone says something that triggers you, right? Maybe a joke doesn't land right. Maybe the music is too loud. Maybe you just feel out of place all of a sudden. For us Pisces moon, we'll probably need to dissolve the discomfort somehow. Maybe go outside for some air. Find that blunt you got in your fanny pack. Am I speaking too personally or am I speaking too personally? Maybe you get a little floaty and distant. Maybe you find the one person who seems deep and have this weird philosophical conversation until you feel all right again. If you're a Virgo moon, you might focus on something practical. Maybe you start tidying up that snack table. Maybe you start to help the host with something. Maybe you mentally organize your exit strategy because fixing something small will make you feel more regulated. And then for our Gemini moons, you might need to circulate, text your best friend about what just went on, child. Move to a different conversation, but what is going on over there? Talk through it with someone, even if they don't totally get it. And now your sun, what you're building towards long term, maybe later after the party, you reflect. What did you take from it? What are you moving towards? For a Libra sun, they may like think about the connections that they made and try to like think, Did you create any balanced relationships? Did you learn how to read people better? Did you practice being diplomatic even if it was hard? For a Cancer sun, you might think about whether you felt safe. Did you find your people? Did you create emotional bonds? Will you even see them again? And for Aries sun, you might think about whether you broke any new ground. Did you initiate anything? Did you start something that could lead somewhere? Did you move first on anything? All three layers are operating, all three matter. So let's talk about when they're in harmony. Sometimes all three are incompatible elements or similar energies. Maybe you're a Gemini sun, which would be late spring, Libra moon, which would be autumn equinox, Aries rising, which would be first thaw. See, all three of these are about movement and initiation in some form. All three want to engage with the environment actively. And when that happens, you feel coherent. Like all parts of you are pulling in roughly the same direction. And that's harmony. But it doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. It just means that there's less internal friction. And this is why there's no bad charts, because it's just the way you work with the energy. That's it. You're getting information. That's it. But when they're in conflict, sometimes they're in completely different season and strategies. So maybe you're a Virgo sun, late summer, refinement, analysis, a Pisces moon, late winter, dissolution, fluidity, Libra rising, autumn equinox, balance, assessment. So like your sun would want to refine and perfect. Your moon would want to dissolve and not hold form too tightly. Your rising would want to balance and adapt. Those don't always agree. Your sun is always trying to organize something, but your moon needs to let it be undefined and messy for a while. And your rising is presenting you as diplomatic and balanced when you're actually just trying to be very precise about something. That's friction. And here's the thing, like I said before, friction isn't bad. Friction is just complexity. It means you can't default to just one mode. You have to learn how to navigate multiple strategies at once. So you have to develop range. And honestly, I think people with friction in their big three are often more interesting and more adaptable and just more human. Which is why I like to talk about different reality stars, because they're some of the easiest observable reality that I can get. But people with super harmonious charts can sometimes get stuck in one approach. People with friction learn how to hold multiple truths at the same time. One thing I will say about a lot of the reality stars I look into, majority of them do not have any of the same placements in their big three. Um, you're not going to see the same placements for most of them. And I think that's what makes them layered and interesting and why they normally end up on our TV for the most part. Let's talk about some common confusions. I want to kind of clear them up. One is I don't relate to my sun sign at all, which is so common because someone will be like, oh, I'm a Cancer, but I'm not emotional or nurturing. Or I'm an Aries, but I'm actually pretty cautious. And I think this is why this happens because your sun is where you're going, not where you are. If you're 22, you may not be fully embodying your sun sign yet. You might be living more from your moon or your rising. You might still be learning because your sun is your long game. It is what makes more sense as you age. And also, you should check your moon and rising because maybe you have an Aquarius moon and a Virgo rising. These energies are going to be way more visible day to day than your Cancer sun. So give your sun time because you're walking towards it. Another one is I relate way more to my rising than my sun. That definitely tracks because your rising is what you do. Your sun is what you're becoming. Of course, your rising probably feels more familiar because you're living it every single day. That doesn't mean your sun doesn't matter. It just may mean that you haven't fully walked into it yet. Another one is my moon doesn't make any sense. Okay. Some people will feel like I have a Virgo moon, but I'm not analytical about my feelings. But here's the thing. Your moon isn't about how you think about your feelings. It's about how you regulate when you feel. Having a Virgo moon doesn't mean you intellectualize everything. It means when you're dysregulated, your system wants to fix something and organize something and to make something more functional. Maybe you clean when you're upset or make lists. Maybe you focus on solving a practical problem. Maybe you help someone else with something tangible. That's still Virgo moon. It's just your regulation system doing what it knows how to do. Then maybe you also feel like I'm three different people. Yeah, exactly. Because you are operating with three different seasonal strategies. And that's not a problem or you being inconsistent or fake. That's just how it works. You're not supposed to be one simple thing. You're supposed to be complex. And your job is to learn how to integrate all three, how to let your rising do its job at the door, how to honor your moon when you need to calm down, how to keep moving towards your sun, even when the other two are pulling in different directions. That's the work. That's what makes you whole. So what do you actually do with all this? Okay, because I feel like if you've been here with me so far, you get where I'm going, you get where I'm at. And I hope you get it. And maybe you understand now the sun, moon, and rising. We didn't even talk about the rest of them because, child, there are more. But you know what they are, you know how they work seasonally, and you know why they matter. So What now? First up, if you don't already know your sun, moon, and rising, go find out. You do need your exact birth time for your rising, so ask your parents, check your birth certificate. But once you have it, you have your three core pieces. And step two, ground them. And if you can't find your time, it's not the end of the world. It does just be a little bit harder, and there are also things you can do to try to figure out your chart more. But another thing I would say ground your knowledge in seasons, not keywords. That's what I started to do at the beginning, and it was wrong to me to do at the beginning. Like, don't just memorize Libra's about balance or Cancer's about emotions. Instead, inquire, what season is this? What's actually happening in nature at this time? What survival strategy makes sense? So for your sun, inquire what time of year. What's the long-term strategy that season? For your moon, what season? What does safety look like at that time of year? For your rising, what season? What's the immediate survival response at that threshold? Ground everything more in climate, not personality traits, and that will eventually lead you to the personality traits because that's where we ended up at basically for astrology. Did I put everything? I think I'm missing a slide. But anyway, I am missing a slide. But it's fine. My third step would be to notice where they agree and where they don't. All three are harmony, great. Lead into coherence. If they're all in conflict, also great. Learn to work with that friction. Let each one do its job without trying to force them all to match. You don't need to be simple, you just need to be functional. And the last step I would say is to use them in real time. So start noticing when you walk into a new situation, what does your rising do automatically? When you're stressed or triggered, what does your moon actually need? When you're making long term decisions, what is your sun pulling you toward? And let each one inform you and don't try to override them. I think it's so interesting that so many reality TV people don't know all three of their signs because they're consistently like not just walking into these events all the time. This girl got this over here, then she got a lunch over here, and then we got a brunch. Like the whole premise of most of these like people that at least I'm talking about are housewives who their entire environment is to be hanging out with each other and potentially causing mess. And so I just think it's so interesting that, like, they wouldn't automatically, like, want to make sure that they know what their, moon and rising is, so that way they are more aware of themselves in these situations. Maybe some of them don't wanna be, but I would want to be. But anyway, my final thoughts, and the actual point of all of this is that our sun, moon, and rising aren't personality labels. They're not astrology's version of BuzzFeed quiz. They're 3 different questions your chart is answering about how you move through life. For your sun, where you're going. For your moon, how do you regulate? For your rising, how do you enter? All 3 are shaped by the actual season you were born into. All 3 are survival strategies, and all 3 are real. And once you understand that, once you stop trying to pick which one is the real you and start seeing how all 3 operate simultaneously, I think everything gets easier because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not confused about why you do contradictory things. You're just letting your system do what it was built to do. That's the work. That's what astrology is actually for. Not to give you a fixed identity, but to give you language for the complexity you already are. So go look up your big three if you haven't and start noticing how they show up in your actual life. And I think you might be surprised by what you find.